Hi, my name is Brian and welcome to my new health related channel called Hard Health Truths. This channel is going to be devoted to a range of health related topics. Because this is my first video, I thought I'd do a little bit of an introduction. I won't be doing this on every video, just this one. So the first video is going to be on smoking. After that I'll be doing senescence, which is looking at the effects of aging on the body. After that I intend on doing one that compares an inactive lifestyle to an active lifestyle, or I should say a sedentary lifestyle versus an active lifestyle. Once I've done that, I intend, if the viewership's okay, you know, if only 2 or 3 people have watched it, then I may as well spend my time doing something a bit more productive. If that's not the case, then I will do one on diets, multiple diets. And I don't mean like Atkins plus something like that. What I mean is people who have lots of morbidities or comorbidities. You know, so if someone's got diabetes plus gout plus celiac, then the range of options for foods becomes very limited, and it gets confusing. They're not sure what they can and can't eat. So I might break it down for each individual disease initially, say this is what you can eat on this one, this is what you can eat on this one, this is what you can eat on this one. Then mix them up and say, okay, if you've got this plus this plus this, this is the sort of thing you should be aiming for. And just it might help some people if they're looking at trying to control their morbidities through dietary means. And once I've finished doing that, I just thought I think I should just explain why I'm doing this one on smoking, actually. So I'm doing this one on smoking because a number of years ago I worked for a company and I did a quick presentation, and at the end of the presentation 2 people who it was on smoking actually went out and brought the patches and things to give up smoking. They did in the long run go back to it, smoking, unfortunately. So I will mention that in my quitting strategies at the end, and how you can probably avoid going back to smoking. That's a bigger thing. So without further ado, let's close this down and begin the presentation. I hope you enjoy. Okay, so I've shrunk down now. Let's begin the presentation. Topics covered: introduction to numbers of people affected by smoking, cigarette composition, chemical, biological. I won't be spending too long on this because there's a lot of chemicals in the cigarettes, and it could take like a couple of years worth of presentations on it. So we'll just be going over some of the basic chemicals and some of the main groups of chemicals, just to see the effect they have on different parts of the body. You need to know some of the chemicals because you can show how it affects the body and that. Then we'll be having a look at the interaction of chemicals on the body and organs with pictures. I'll obviously try and explain this as simply as possible. I'm not going to go into too much detail on all the chemical side of stuff, so don't worry about that. And then testimonials throughout from the CDC. I think these are very important. Also, if you want to have a look at some of these testimonials, if you like what you see, I encourage you to go to the CDC website, where they have a lot more. I'm just going to show 2 or 3 throughout this presentation, but they have like about 30 odd. I didn't count them, but they have a lot on the CDC website of people giving their testimonials of how smoking has negatively impacted their lives. And then we're going to have a look at quitting strategies. So this is the important bit: patches, gum, counselling, vaping. The thing with the quitting strategies I'll be looking at, which is considered the most effective, or what. Try and have a look at some of the stats around who has the most success and what technique has the most success. And I believe different things may affect different people, so you've got to find what is right for your particular mind frame. Okay, to begin with though, numbers from the World Health Organization. In 2014, approximately 5.8 trillion cigarettes were consumed worldwide. That's such a big number. It's hard to comprehend it. But I did write an interesting little fact. I've got some statistics on the side here. I've got all my little information bits on the side. So I thought this was interesting. It would take you to count to a trillion, just 1 trillion. It would take one person 31,668 years and 32 days if you spent 1 second on one number to count to 1 trillion. 31,668 years. So that's how many cigarettes. That's an amazing number. I just thought that was interesting. But 5.8 trillion cigarettes consumed worldwide. Right, so 7 million people die each year from smoking. 6 million from direct smoking. Approximately 890,000 from second-hand smoke. So I don't know why they didn't just put like 1 million, but there you go. There's probably a reason there's 110,000 missing from that, if 7 million people die each year. But these are numbers from the World Health Organization. In 2002, the World Health Organization stated that 12 times more British people have died from smoking than World War II. So if you look at the National World War II Museum of New Orleans, which correlates with the Commonwealth War Graves Commission report of 2014 and 2015, the number of British people who died in World War II, including military and civilians, was 450,000. Do the maths, that works out 5.4 million dead. So they're saying here that up until 2002, since the end of World War II, 5.4 million people have died from smoking. So that just puts it into some sort of context of how big a problem it is. Right. Surgeon General's report on smoking and health for the 50th anniversary, USA. So this is for America now. Since the first Surgeon General's report, number of US adult smokers is at 18%. That's down from 42%. This is not all good news though. You'll see why in a bit. 16 million people have at least one smoking related disease currently. So that's a lot of people suffering. And that's at least one disease. Again, there's this comorbidity thing here, 2 or 3. Okay, 8 out of 10 COPD deaths are a result of smoking. So COPD is chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. And basically what that is a combination of a couple of things that are affecting your lungs. So you could have something called emphysema, which I'll explain what that is later, and bronchitis. Those two together will give you COPD. And that usually means you end up on oxygen tanks and that. But you'll be seeing the first video about that in a second. So lung cancer rates are increasing even though smoking is declining. So this is what I said when I said it's not all good news with the drop in smoking rates. And we believe this is because, or well, the theory is because the chemicals being put into cigarettes are now becoming more dangerous than they used to be. And not only the chemicals that you put into the cigarettes, also how the tobacco leaf itself is processed, the pesticides that are being sprayed on it in the fields and how it's been cultivated, how it's being cured. All these things can affect the actual composition of the cigarette and on ignition what the particulate matter, and it's got a gaseous phase and a particulate phase. You know, it can affect all that, all those processes can affect it, and it can change from region to region. So that's probably, we're going to have a look at a graph in a moment. First we're going to have a look at a little video and then we'll have a look at a graph after. So we'll do the video first and then we'll talk about how the lung cancer rates are growing up even though there's a massive drop in the number of people smoking.
Hi, I'm Becky. I started smoking when I was 16. I thought it would make me look so cool and feel so free. Now I have end-stage COPD and I've had lung surgery. And I'm chained to an oxygen tank. My tip is, if you keep smoking, your freedom may only go as far as your oxygen tube.
You can quit. For free help, visit cdc.gov/tip.
Okay, so that was an interesting video. That's a very brave lady there, giving her time up to do that. I think it's a very noble thing, you know, when you're suffering, you've got these massively debilitating disease, and instead of just giving up totally, you say, yeah, let's make this video, let's see if we can show other people what can happen to them, and you know, that's got to be some good karma or whatever you believe in. That's got to be worth something. I think that's very good, very brave of her to do that, and all the other people who have done those testimonials. So anyway, this is a graph of increase in lung cancer rates in the USA. Non-smokers is the bar graph on the left. As you can see, from 1959 all the way up to 2010, it hasn't changed. So what this means is that the increase in the lung cancer rates you can see is actually linked to smoking. If it was linked to an outside factor, then you would expect the increase that you can see for the smokers to also occur to the non-smokers. But it isn't. The lung cancer rate has remained the same for non-smokers. So it has to be the cigarettes and the smoking. And even though the number of smokers are going down, the rates of lung cancer are going up. And if you look at the female rate, they're overtaking the males by 2010. So they're more at risk of getting lung cancer now than the males. So this is from the Surgeon General's report based in America, of course. And I just thought that was a very interesting sort of fact that you can reduce the amount of people smoking, but still those smoking are actually, it's far more deadly for them than it used to be. And you wouldn't think it would be the case, but it looks like it is. Right. Stats from the UK ONS, so this is the Office of National Statistics. Current proportion of smokers in England is 15.8%, which equates to 7.6 million smokers. Oh, damn, I clicked off my thing. Hang on. didn't need to do that. Right. This is my information sheet. I want that up, although I've memorised most of it. So anyway, current proportion of smokers in England is 15.8%, which equates to 7.6 million smokers. I'll just go through this one. Northern Ireland has a highest smoker rate of 18.5%, 243,000. Quite sad. We'll see from the graph. We will see from the graph why that is in a moment. Scotland smokers are at 17.7%, approximately 718,000 people. And Welsh smokers are at 16.9%, approximately 399,000 people. Okay, so of the three per capita, England's doing the best. Then we've got Wales doing the second best. Then Scotland and Northern Ireland's bringing up the rear. Didn't always used to be the way, though. Have a look at this graph. So in 2010, the lowest smoking rate per capita was actually Northern Ireland. Then we had England was next. Then this orange grass is Wales. And the final one here, is red one, is Scotland. Now you can see a nice decrease in the number of people smoking over time from 2010 to 2016. You can see England, Scotland and Wales have all gone down nicely. But Northern Ireland has pretty much gone from being the lowest to the highest smoking rate. So I'm not too sure why that is. I did have a quick look on the ONS. I didn't see it when I was on there, but it's probably worth Googling if you're interested in that, as to why Northern Ireland hasn't really had much change. It might be interesting to see what their advertising strategies are compared to the rest of the UK, and that might give an indication. Or do they buy the cigarettes from the same places? Maybe some cigarettes are more addictive than, well, they are. Some cigarettes are more addictive than others, and we'll talk about all that plus freebasing in a bit. Okay, so regional variation. Different countries have vastly different cigarette consumption. China has one of the highest rates of smokers. Individual smokers vary on amount consumed per person. See Tobacco Atlas. So I'm going to be looking at the Tobacco Atlas in a bit, just not too long on it. We'll just have a quick look through it, and you can look at that in your own time. But I think it's quite interesting to, some people might find that interesting to see, you know, who's smoking, where they're smoking, who's spending the money, where the farmlands is. We'll have a quick look at the farmland, a quick look at the death rates and male and female death rates in the Tobacco Atlas, and then we'll go on to the main talk. Okay, and in the UK, number of smokers has been reducing, but like most countries, quitting is still one of the most preventable forms of disease control. So even though the numbers are down, it's still one of the most preventable forms of disease control, still way above obesity and the other epidemics we're hearing about a lot more. Well, I say way above, I'm not too sure the current figures, but it's still above it. Okay, so this is a Tobacco Atlas. You can find this at tobaccoatlas.org. If you scroll down on the main page, you can see cigarette use globally, and here you can click on individual countries, and it will tell you the consumption rate for that country per person per year. Then have you had a look at water pipes? I recommend looking at water pipes because actually the usage of water pipes is going up and up and up, and a lot of that's getting quite popular at universities and colleges throughout the West. It's obviously it's very popular in the Middle East, and now it's spreading into the West a lot. And a lot of people are under the misapprehension that smoking water pipes is actually better for you than cigarette smoking. However, it's starting to look like smoking cigarettes is actually, smoking water pipes is actually worse for you. The reason I say this is because as you smoke on a water pipe, the research is showing that it heats up the smoke as it passes through the water. That has a relaxing effect on the lungs, and it's drawn deeper into the lungs. The other reason is it's a social thing. So even though you may be able to argue that each individual draw on a water pipe actually has less particulate matter than, say, a cigarette, the reality is you're smoking for a longer period of time, and the accumulated effect of that has a greater impact than actually cigarette smoking. So yeah, each individual draw may be less. I'm not sure on the actual research on that yet, it's not out yet, but definitely the combined effect of smoking over an hour or 2 hours compared to however many cigarettes you would have smoking in that same time period, it has a greater impact. So actually water pipes is looking like it could be very damaging and linked to a lot of cancers already. Certainly if you come and have a read through their article and do look around some research, it's not good. Anyway, enough of that. Let's go on to the topics covered. So we're quickly going to look at smoking death toll. So the darker colour is more deaths, the lighter colour is less deaths, and on this map you can see the dark colour straight away, a lot of Eastern Europe. Let's just click on some of this. Is male deaths since 2010. So 28.35% of male deaths are due to smoking, all ages, 2010. Canada, 20.8% potential male deaths due to smoking in all ages. Let's have a look at UK because I'm from there. 21.73%. So it's still very high, isn't it? That's male deaths. Let's have a look at North Korea. 34.33, very high death rate from smoking in North Korea. Let's have a look at females. So they're smoke less. You can see straight away the colour change is very marked, isn't it? Look at that, from that dark to that nice and light. Africa's around about the same. They've got very low death rates for smoking. Must have good lungs or don't smoke much. Okay, so Russia 9.8% for the females. UK 16.24. What I would say is the death rate for smoking in the UK should be lower than that, because the campaigns and that have obviously what I showed earlier. There's a decrease in the amount of people smoking. Although again, I did show that the actual chemical composition of the cigarettes seems to be causing just as many problems, or more problems. So it's hard to say what the death rate is now. China's definitely going to have problems though, because at the moment, so the female deaths are quite low at 11.9. The males are really a bit higher at 19.48. I'm guessing that's way over 20% now, because if you look at the graph of smoking use in China, you'll find that's going way up, whereas Europe and America's going down and Africa's down, I believe. China is definitely going up, so they're going to have a problem in the future. So that's the death rates. Let's have a quick look now at growing tobacco. You'll just pick one country and then I'll show you why that's important to know. Just to show you, just try to give you a whole overall impact of just how bad smoking is. So you look at China, 1,500,000 hectares of the land is given over to growing tobacco plants. So that's the equivalent of 1,500,000 soccer pitches. Or a hectare is, I believe it's 100 metres by 100 metres. You can Google that just to check. I believe that's what it is, 100 metres by 100 metres. But anyway, 1,500,000 hectares, about 2.4 acres, or 1,500,000 soccer pitches. That's a lot of land given over to a crop that's pretty destructive. Brazil, 410,000. America, 136,000 hectares. Surprised Canada has any, actually. 15,000. I thought it'd be too cold. Never mind. Let's have a look. What is that? Indonesia's quite high as well, isn't it? Let's have a look. 249,000 hectares in Indonesia. So anyway, looking at this one, we can see undernourishment. So look at China. This grows 3,201,850,000 tonnes of tobacco. Yet they've got 11% of their population undernourished. India, 875,000 tonnes, 17% of the population undernourished. Korea, 80,000 tonnes, 31% undernourished. Zambia is really bad, 61,500 tonnes and 43% of the population undernourished. Now, down here it does show alternative case studies of growing different crops which make more money, white mushroom and grapes. But then you've got to ask, well, if they're making more money, why wouldn't they just switch over to them? And then you come down to government subsidies. So here's an example of Poland. So why would you grow a crop? So say you make profit, I don't know, so these are in hundreds of millions, right? So say your crop's making there, what is that, about 70 million? But they're giving you over with subsidies, it comes to 225 million. And you grow a crop that's productive in its own right, gets you more money, say 100 million, you're still going to go with the government subsidy. So basically, governments are taking taxpayers' money to grow a crop which kills people and leaves them undernourished. Maybe I'm being overly simplistic. That's what it looks like to me anyway. So why would Zambia even grow any tobacco when they've got 43% of the population undernourished? Government subsidies. And why do the government subsidise it? Who knows? What is their reason for doing that? Backhanders. So anyway, I don't know, but let's have a look. Okay, Tobacco Atlas. Right. I want to have a look at... Yes, we'll go on to countries. Let's pick country. What should we say? So I'm just going to quickly show you Vanuatu. Let's have a look at that because I've never heard of them. Is it going to load? All right, so you could come to this atlas, find your country, and then it'll tell you some interesting facts about, you know, the campaigns you're carrying on in that country, and, you know, how many young people are smoking, old people smoking, the death rates, etc. So it's got a breakdown for your individual country. I don't know anything about Vanuatu, so we'll have a look at this. Tobacco harms the health, the treasury and the spirit of Vanuatu. Every year more than 200 of its people are killed by tobacco-caused disease, while more than 100 children and more than 225,000 adults continue to use tobacco every day. Blah, blah, blah. So deaths, 44% of men, 4.3% of women. So even though fewer men die on average in Vanuatu than other middle income countries, still 3 men are being killed by tobacco every week and 1 woman every week. So it's still too high, isn't it, really? So you can have a look at the market. 28% of men. What's that? Adult smoking. So that's quite high, isn't it? Even though fewer men smoke on average. Oh, it's lower than average. The middle income countries, 22,700 men still smoke cigarette each day. Right, okay. I actually think it's a small country. More boys smoke in Vanuatu than average in middle income. Oh, wow. Almost 20% of boys are smoking and 8.2% of girls. So they've got a future problem. They need to look at that. Currently using tobacco, no, 0%, not available, perhaps. Policies, so you can see the social policies for your country to see if they're doing a good job or not. So this doesn't look, this is a lot of no's there. Smoke-free healthcare facilities, no. So you can smoke in hospital. Is that what that means? Smoke-free universities, no. Smoke-free government facilities, no. Smoke-free indoor offices, no. Smoke-free restaurants, no. Smoke-free pubs and bars, no. So they're really not trying, are they, in Vanuatu? No wonder they've got so many kids smoking. Warn about the dangers of tobacco users on product packaging. Australia, graphic best practice. So Australia seems to be the gold standard then. Vanuatu graphics, that's good. So yeah, come and have a look at this. Anyone? I just got to quickly. So yeah, before I finish, we'll quickly come here. Where is it? Here we go. If you want to support them, this is the cancer people, the American Cancer Society or something. Will it load eventually? Yeah, American Cancer Society bookstore. So obviously they fund cancer research, and that benefits everyone. So it's well worth, if you're interested and like those facts, come to the Tobacco Atlas bookstore and you can get the book there. I guess you can come to the American Cancer Society bookstore, or you can go to the Tobacco Atlas directly. And I think to get off of this, Alt's left out, so that's worth getting. So she's a little island. It's quite nice actually. So it looks like yeah, off the mainland of Australia. I wonder if it's owned by Australia. There's a South Pacific Ocean island nation made of roughly 80 islands. Oh, nice. Okay, so this is a graphic from the website compoundchem.com. It's a nice little graphic they've made. Haven't changed it anyway. Okay, so the bottom left, the number of compounds with confirmed carcinogenic activity is 70. That number actually is suspected to be higher. That's why it's only confirmed at the moment. The estimated number of chemical compound cigarette smoke is 7,357. That number varies from research to research, but then so does the tobacco leaf used, the curing processes, the manufacturing processes. So there is a variance in the number of chemicals in the cigarette, depending on what you read. But that will always be the case anyway, because of all the different types of cigarettes. By the way, a quick note that carcinogen, if anyone's not aware, is something that brings about a cancer. Right, so on to the compounds. Nicotine. Nicotine acts similar to caffeine. It's an addictive substance. It can increase the heart rate, increase the blood pressure, increase blood glucose. There's a common misconception that nicotine is actually carcinogenic in and of itself, but I haven't found any research to prove that that's the case. I think that's just something people think because they link cigarettes and nicotine to smoking and cancer, of course. That's the main links. But nicotine isn't actually carcinogenic. Right, so the next group is N-nitrosamines, which is a large group of compounds. These are referred to as tobacco-specific. So you have tobacco-specific nitrosamines, TSNA in short. So when you read the literature, if you see TSNA, that's what that means. They're created via a process of nitrization while curing the tobacco plants. The two types of chemical that are carcinogenic are NNK, which is nicotine-derived nitrosamine ketone, and NNN, which is nitrosamine nicotine. So studies have been carried out into rats and are currently being tested on humans. The rats showed that these compounds cause cancer in the lungs, the pancreas, the esophagus, and oral cavities. Okay, so now let's... Oh, and it may also cause reproductive damage. Let's have a look at benzene. Benzene is another known human carcinogen, something causes cancer. Damages bone marrow, lowers red blood cell count. Well, red blood cells are created in the bone marrow along with white blood cells. So you can see why that's the case. May harm reproductive organs. Aromatic amines is a large class of compounds, includes 2-aminophenylene, known human carcinogen linked with bladder cancer. Acetaldehyde, known animal carcinogen, probably human carcinogen. Irritant to skin and eyes, irritant to respiratory tract. 1,3-butadiene, known human carcinogen, suspected human teratogen, irritant eyes and skin, and irritant to upper respiratory tract. So a teratogen, that is something that brings about an abnormal growth or a mental retardation that can affect the growth of an embryo or a fetus. So if you're thinking of having a baby or are pregnant, that's one of the reasons you don't want to be smoking, because of these chemical compounds. Right, then we've got acrolein, possible human carcinogen, known DNA mutagen, irritant to skin and nasal passages, may contribute to heart disease. And polyaromatics, large group of compounds, known human carcinogen, known DNA mutagen, affects reproductive capacity. So again, if you're having kids, probably best idea to give up smoking. Okay, and that just quickly goes over the chemical composition of the actual cigarette. Now we're going to look at the effects on the different parts of the body. Okay, so now we're going to look at smoking effects on the body. There are too many effects to list overall, because it obviously affects every organ and all the tissues. It can get around the whole body. So we will cover the lungs, the effect on the bronchioles and the alveoli. Then we'll look at the effect on the brain. We'll have a look at some MRI scans and see how it affects the brain. Then we'll have a look at the vasculature and some diseases associated with that. And finally, we'll look at pregnancy. So to begin with, we'll start with the lungs. Now, I need to get my notes up over here so I know where I am. Scroll up. Okay, so before the smoke gets into the lungs, we breathe it into the mouth, obviously, and there's particulate matter and gaseous matter in the composition of cigarettes. So the first place that you'll come into contact is your gums, your teeth. So there are videos of people with their teeth falling out and getting mouth cancers and that. So that's the first place that's affected. Comes down to your trachea. This is your breathing pipe. Your larynx is also affected. Some people are talking like gravelly voice and that. And then it goes down into bronchi. So the bronchi are big branches that come off the trachea and they go into your lungs. And then as it thins and gets narrow, these become your bronchioles at the end. And at the end, you have these little sacs called alveoli. Now, what happens is these sacs, these bronchioles, the little tubes that lead to the sacs, as if you're blowing up a balloon, the little section that leads up to blowing that balloon, that becomes clogged. It loses its elasticity. And what happens is the air becomes trapped inside the alveoli, and then they can rupture. Once they rupture, you can no longer partake of gaseous exchange. So the shrinking and the collapse in the bronchioles leads to a rupturing of the alveoli, and then when the red blood cells come along and they try and swap their oxygen for carbon dioxide, so they give off the carbon dioxide, they receive the oxygen from the lungs to take around the body, they can't do that. So there's less oxygen in the body, and that can lead to emphysema and obviously chronic conditions like COPD, which, as I mentioned before, is a combination of like bronchitis plus emphysema. So that's why people are on the oxygen tanks, because there's so little oxygen getting in. The red blood cells are already reduced because you're smoking. It reduces the number in your spine, in the bone marrow where it's created. So you've got fewer blood cells, and then also with the mechanical effect of the lungs filling up with the tar that lines as you're smoking in that particulate matter, that reduces the ability for the oxygen to get through the alveoli because it becomes clogged up with this gooey tar. So there's that mechanical process stopping. Then there's the rupture of the alveoli. So you also have the composition of the gaseous phase, like the carbon monoxide, that competes with on the hemoglobin, which is on the red blood cells. They have hemoglobin, which attaches to the oxygen, but instead you end up with CO, carbon monoxide, attaching onto the hemoglobin. So you've got fewer blood cells that get less access to oxygen. Some of them are getting carbon monoxide instead of oxygen, and all this means that there's much reduced oxygen in the body, and that's why people, when they have emphysema and COPD, they're on the oxygen tanks to try and, at least with those alveoli that are left, the bronchioles that aren't clogged, at least it tries to saturate it so you can get more oxygen into those red blood cells. but overall they're still going to have a lower amount of oxygen in the body, and all the cells and tissues, they require you to have oxygen for their processes to work, and that's why they end up taking the deeper breaths, trying to draw and breathe, and really struggle to breathe because they've got a low oxygen content in their body. Okay, and part of this is also an inflammatory response. There are toxins involved in the cigarettes which create an inflammatory response, and that inflammatory response damages the alveoli, so that also has a compounding effect on the whole thing. And emphysema is the 4th largest killer in the United States of America. So it's a pretty big problem, and it's nearly always, I mean, it's over 90-something% I read, it's because of smoking. There is a condition where you can get it without being a smoker, but it's nearly always because of smoking. Okay. Okay, so here's a filled-in slide. I forgot to click through that. The last one, obviously, lung cancer. Lung cancer, there's 2 types of lung cancer. There's cells that metastasize. So basically what that means is they can keep growing and growing and growing, and they can break off. Those are the dodgy ones. They can metastasize and go around the body. They can end up in the lymphatic system. The lymphatic system will take it around the body, and you can end up pretty much anywhere in the body. And there's ones that don't metastasize, so that's not quite as bad, but it's still you still get a growth within the lungs, which can prevent and block breathing, make it harder to breathe. Lymphatics, if you're not aware, is a system of draining off fluid from your tissues and your cells, and that lymph is then taken into the lymph nodes, where it's assessed by the adaptive immunity system, and if there's anything dodgy in it, they can then, adaptive immunity can create the antibodies and that to fight off whatever is in that particular bit of lymph. So if there's a blockage to the lymph nodes because of cancer or anything, then that stops your adaptive immunity, can lead to swelling in the legs, etc. Okay, so lung cancer is also, I forget the death rate for lung cancer. I think it's got the highest death rate of all the cancers, so, and it's predominantly because of smoking. You can get lung cancer without smoking, but it's predominantly because of smoking, lung cancer. So you're just not playing the odds if you are smoking. Okay. Okay, so this is a picture of some lungs that have been filled with tar. As you can see, they're nice and black there. Here we have a melanoma, the white little dot down here. I took this off the internet, said it was a surgeon who took this photo. I didn't see a name or anything, or whether we could use it or not, so I hope they don't mind me using this picture. It is for educational purposes, so you can see what happens when you smoke. There are plenty of pictures of lungs encrusted with tar on the internet you can have a look at. Some videos you can see of people cutting them open and seeing all the tar come out. So it's probably worth getting that sort of thing if you're looking at quitting smoking, and is using it as part of your quitting strategy. You know, have an active plan, something that you can look at and say, ooh, you know, I don't want that happening to me. So get a nice folder builder, keep reinforcing yourself with these images and testimonials as to why you're trying to get up, because it is obviously very, very hard to give up something like smoking. Okay, so what we're going to do now is have a look at a video from a lady whose family has suffered from effects of smoking, particularly lung cancer, so it ties into this. It's a bit of a sad tale, so have your tissues ready, unless of course you have a heart of stone, but we'll go on to that.
The first time I had a cigarette, I was in 5th grade, and my friends were smoking. Everyone I knew smoked, definitely all the older kids I knew smoked, and I thought I should smoke to fit in. Everyone in my family smoked, and I was smoking every day by 8th grade. Smoking has caused a lot of pain in my life. I lost my grandfather to lung cancer. I had my first child 2 months early. My dad, who I smoked many cigarettes with, now has stage 4 lung cancer, and I know that by sharing the pain and the hurt that smoking has caused in my life, that it's going to help people quit smoking. When I was a senior in high school, my grandfather was diagnosed with lung cancer. they gave him 6 months to live, and he only lived like 3 or 4 months. And that was a horrible, that looked like a horrible way to die. And after that, I knew I didn't want to get sick like that from smoking, but it wasn't enough to make me quit. And no, my dad's not even 50, and he has stage 4 lung cancer, and I'm hopeful that he's not going to die soon, but it is stage 4 lung cancer. And I have 3 kids, and the oldest is 7. I have a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old, and I know that my 1-year-old might not ever remember her grandpa.
Okay, so now we're going to look at the effects of smoking on the brain. So smoking can reduce IQ by 7 points. We'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. Increased risk of stroke. So a stroke is basically where there's reduced blood flow to the brain from a blockage. So the blockage comes about from the smoking, and we'll talk about how smoking affects the vasculature in a moment, so you can see how it's affecting the blood flow through to the brain. So you can get an actual blockage, stops blood getting into the brain cells. Now, brain cells actually have a higher rate of operation compared to other cells within the body. So they need more oxygen, and they need more like glucose and that to carry out their functions. If they don't get the necessary oxygen and glucose, etc., to carry out their functions, then they can die off very quickly, and the effect will be very noticeable. So if you're having a stroke, you've got a blockage, the blood doesn't get to the brain cells, what you'll notice is people, the corner of their mouth will drop down. They'll start talking with slurred speech. Their arms might not be able to move their arm. There is another type of stroke as well called hemorrhagic, where there's a rupture in the artery wall and then it bleeds out into the brain. So that's the smoke. In both cases, just call an ambulance straight away. Studies with MRI scans have shown smoking reduces grey matter, so we're going to have a look at those MRI scans in a moment. There's a difference between male and female brain, so what I mean by that is that there's a different effect of smoking on the male and the female brain, and the MRI scan will show that as well. Brain cancer, question mark. I put a question mark because currently I found no literature that shows a link between smoking and brain cancer. However, until this particular research I'm going to show you, it doesn't show a link, but it does point towards a potential future link between smoking and brain cancer. Okay, so let's go on to the MRI image. Okay, so now we're going to look at an MRI scan. The differences in grey matter volume between NDs and controls, NDs being nicotine dependence. I'll quickly give you the reference for this, I did write it down. So this is from The Effects of Chronic Cigarette Smoking on Grey Matter Volume, Influence of Sex by Teresa R. Franklin et al., who is Assistant Professor of Neuroscience and Psychiatry, Centre for Studies of Addiction at the University of Pennsylvania. Okay, so you can see from this particular image, this different cross sections, the lighter blue colour shows a reduction in grey matter volume. So for all subjects, you can see there's always a reduction in the thalamus. Different areas of the brain are affected. The red shows where there's an increase in grey matter volume. There's only an increase for males, but not for females. Now we're going to actually focus on the thalamus. In the thalamus, what it does, first let's talk about what it does. So the thalamus sends motor and sensory information across to the cortex, and it's responsible for your conscious state, your sleeping state. So it's responsible for your gustatory, your eating. It's responsible for your senses involved in auditory, hearing, your memory formation, pain receptors. So it's responsible for all those things. So you can see how that can be linked to IQ, because obviously your intelligence is linked to your ability to interact with the world, the environment, and your senses, to hear the lectures, to form the image, to postulate, hypotheses based on said images formed, etc., etc. So you can see how if you're shrinking the actual area that's involved in all those senses, how it can actually reduce your IQ. I think now would be a good time also to talk about the effect of nicotine. So first we're going to talk about how nicotine gets into cells, and the skullduggery of tobacco companies, and then we're going to talk about the actual effect on the neurons in the brain. So first you need to understand the structure of nicotine. Nicotine, it has two forms. It has a base form and an ionic form. In its base form, it has a negative charge. But its natural state is actually its ionic form. That negative charge likes to attract to something, so it attracts to protons. So you have a nicotine ion. Now, the thing to note about the ion is it's very hard for it to pass across mucous membranes. So the nicotine, it's very hard for it to get up to the brain or anywhere else for that matter, because it doesn't pass through the membranes, and the membranes, these phospholipid bilayers, and I'll mention a bit more about that when we talk about the actual getting into the neurons and that. But I'm losing my train of thought here. But the nicotine, so what the tobacco companies did was they were told pretty much by the governments that, you know, you need to stop how much nicotine you're putting into the cigarettes. So they had to, there's limits on this, caps on it. You can't just keep adding and adding and adding. So what they did was, well, we can't add any more nicotine to our cigarettes. So they did this freebasing, which is what they do for cocaine to make it more of a hit. So what that does is they strip, they deprotonate the ionic form of nicotine. They take the protons off, then the nicotine itself then becomes a base which can travel across the membranes much easier, and within 3 to 4 seconds of taking a hit of a cigarette, the nicotine can be in your brain. So that's what you need to know about nicotine. You also need to know that the fact that the thalamus itself has the greatest amount of nicotine receptors in the whole of the brain, which is probably why you see that reduction consistently through male and female brains in the thalamus region. And because of that, that's postulated that this could be an area that's increased risk of getting brain cancer, which is what the actual study shows. I'll talk about in a second. So how do you get that effect? Why does it feel so good to smoke? Well, this nicotine, what it does, it attaches to the neurons. So it attaches to the receptors on the neurons. It opens up a ligand-gated channel. So this is basically, just imagine you've got this layer and you've got a tube running through it. The nicotine comes along, it attaches to it, and it opens up a channel. This channel allows calcium ions to flow into the neuron. When the calcium ions flow into the neuron, it releases a neurotransmitter. So the neurotransmitter that it releases is actually dopamine. And dopamine is the happy chemical. It's what makes you feel good. Most people know that, I believe. So they found a way of making it so you can get this hit straight away, straight into the brain to release dopamine to make you feel good. And the problem with that is that chemical is not meant to make you feel good for doing something bad. So you're supposed to feel a bit good for, yeah, I did my studying, yeah, I worked, yeah, having a meal can make you feel good because you need to eat to survive, obviously, and all those other processes involved in survival. So it's meant to be a reward for doing something positive and constructive. However, in the modern world, we're getting these rewards for doing stuff that isn't productive. And smoking is definitely one of them. Not only is it not productive, it's very, very harmful. So you're kind of rewiring your brain to make you happy about doing something that's killing you, basically. So that's why I find that all very cynical, almost, from the manufacturers deliberately going against the laws of the countries to reduce the nicotine content, but they're finding a way to make it even more potent and powerful. Okay, so I think that's enough on that slide. Let's move on. Okay, so this is an extract of the discussion. I did just quickly highlight, and it wouldn't let me do it because I'm actually in the presentation whilst recording. So I'm just going to read out a small section from the middle here. So in humans, the thalamus has the highest density of nicotine acetylcholine receptors of any brain region. And thus constant bombardment of these receptors by chronic cigarette smoking may make it a prime target for potential morphometric anomalies. So what that means, morphometric, so that's from the Greek, it means to change shape. Anomalies, well, that's something outside of the normal, so you've got something changing shape outside of the normal. Indeed, cigarette smoking has been shown to correlate with increased nicotine binding in the human thalamus. Alternatively, and not mutually exclusive, this region may be particularly susceptible to one or more of the numerous carcinogens found in cigarette smoke, e.g. acetaldehyde, arsenic, benzene. So this is what I was saying about this research showing that There could potentially be a link between smoking and brain cancer. That none's been found yet, but this is an area that can be looked at, that particular region, the thalamus. That's a similar link actually for caffeine. I believe caffeine receptors, I did remember reading that caffeine receptors actually increase and they grow their own. Your brain rewires itself to accept caffeine, so that's why it's very hard to give up smoking. If you're a long time coffee, if you're a long time coffee drinker, it becomes hard to give up it because you've actually rewired your brain for it. And it's the same is true for smoking. It becomes very hard to actually give up or not keep having that craving over time. Okay, so now we're going to look at vasculature. We'll struggle with that. Effect on arteries and effect on veins. Arteries, narrowing from nicotine. We've already spoken about that, so no need to go on about that. Atheroma. So atheroma, this is the fatty deposit that lines the inside of arterial walls. Atherosclerosis is what it's called. And with a narrowing of the arteries plus that fatty deposit, it vastly reduces the amount of blood that can flow through the arteries. This can lead to a condition called PAD, peripheral arterial disease. So peripheral arterial disease, I'll quickly talk about that. And you've got, so to take your legs, and you've got some arteries that come down the legs. Those fatty deposits go down the arteries. That reduces the blood flow. That reduces the blood flow getting to the muscles, and then that can cause pain in the muscles. So this is what claudication is. When you go for a walk, say you take 500 steps, 1,000 steps, and suddenly you get this burning, really painful, really sharp pain in your calf, or suddenly you have to stop walking. Then if you wait a minute or 2 minutes, the pain goes away and you're able to walk again, and it may come on again depending on how many steps you take. So this is an indication that you've got peripheral arterial disease. Other indications include a loss of hair on the toes, the feet, the lower legs, slower growing rate for the nails, shiny skin, coldness to the extremities. In men you can get erectile dysfunction. And if you do suffer from these and go to GP, one of the main ways of curing peripheral arterial disease is, number 1, give up smoking. Number 2, change your diet, make sure you're eating healthy. Number 3, exercise. If you can only take 500 steps, try and take 600 the next day. Just keep trying and improving it, increasing. And then, of course, it can have an effect on the increased time for wounds to heal. So again, that's because of the reduced blood flow, the reduced oxygen. We talked about the lungs and how there's reduced oxygen in the red blood cells because of the methane, how reduced oxygen can get through because of the tar in the lungs. So all this, you need that blood flow and that to get to that wound site so it can start the healing process. So we're going to use an example from Podiatry Today. I need to check my notes now. So this is from Podiatry Today, and it's entitled How to Address Smoking in Podiatric Patients by Alan Jacobs. So he looked at some research from Kranitz and colleagues which demonstrated in a study of 46 patients that the healing time for an Austin bunionectomy in smokers was 120 days, and this compares to 69 days in non-smokers. There's almost a doubling of the time to heal from an operation because of a smoking. Research also demonstrated tobacco use to be associated with increased pain following surgery. So not only does it take twice as long to heal, you also get more pain for that longer healing time. So if you know you're going in for a surgery, absolutely stop smoking. Okay, so before we move on, I'm just going to give a quick anecdote. One of the reasons I'm doing this, and it does link to arteries because that's why I'll do it here. There are many reasons why I do things, but one of the reasons that I'm doing this is because about 15 years, 20 years ago, I was working in a hospital. I won't say where or which hospital, but I was working in this hospital as a healthcare assistant, and I'd turned up early, so I was helping out one of the nurses, and she then went off to do the handover, and I had to finish off. But of course, that meant I missed the beginning of the handover. So I went into the room and got the patient's records out to try and catch up what I'd missed out on. I was reading through it and I saw that it said not for 350. So in this particular hospital, you rang 350 and the crash team would come and they would, resuscitate. So this guy was 30 years old, this patient. 30 years old, not for 350. And I'd previously seen his wife with the small kids and that come out of the room. Oh, that's weird. Why is he not 350? So this was an ear, nose and throat ward as well. So you think ear, nose and throat, it just doesn't think that that's going to be that serious. But, well, I didn't anyway. So I went and spoke to one of the nurses. I read the record, spoke to the nurses and said, how come he's not 350 though? And she says, well, he's got 2 days left to live. And I was like, wow. And it turns out that even though he got throat cancer, the throat cancer had spread across. So here you've got the clavicle. Underneath it, you've got a subclavian artery. So the cancer cells had spread out and lined the walls of the artery. And once they go through the arteries, that's it, I'm afraid. So, yeah, and it all sticks out because I went into his room and he turned the lights out. He was standing there in the dark and he looked at me as I came in and I looked at him. And we both just stared. And I was like, and in that moment, I was like, I can't smile. You can't smile because he's dead in 2 days. He's looking at me like he knows he's dead in 2 days, like whatever I do is completely meaningless, that I had all these things going on. The way he looked at me, it was like a horrified, a lost, I don't know, a totally futile person. All of this manifested in the way he was looking at me, and it was so weird. I just didn't know what to say or do. I mean, I did end up saying, okay, I have to do the base checks, and he sort of like, no, yeah, okay, and he wasn't smiling, he wasn't frowning or sad, he was just there. And yeah, I remember doing the checks. So as a healthcare assistant, you have to do the saturation, the oxygen saturation levels, take his blood pressure, his temperature. But it sort of stuck with me because I know if that guy could have gone back in a time machine and not smoked, he absolutely would. There's no way he'd have smoked, absolutely. And it's like, this is the problem with smoking. It's such an insidious disease. It takes a long time before you start suffering the effects of it. And you always get people say things like, well, my granddad smoked 80 cigarettes a day. Yeah, there's plenty that smoked 80 cigarettes a day and didn't live to 100 or however long your granddad lived to. You know, there's plenty in the grave now. So I always think that's a bad thing for people to say. And this guy, 30 something, and is like, because he smoked, he's now not going to see his kids grow up. And it's, that always stuck with me, that look though, when I first went in the room, always stuck me. So that's one of the reasons I'm doing this. Anyway, enough of me waffling on. I'm going to quickly show a video now of someone who's suffering from a condition that affects both the arteries and the veins. Then I'll quickly show a disease of the veins, and then we'll move on. Okay.
I started having trouble walking, and I thought I had pulled a muscle, but I went to the doctor, and they told me that I had blood clots. And from the blood clots, it led me to another doctor, which diagnosed me with Berger's disease. I've been like this for almost 17 years, and I still have to be very careful on what I do because today or tomorrow, I could bump into something and lose another finger. It's a terrible disease. You know, it's a very painful disease, and it's an ongoing disease. My first 3 or 4 years were just, I mean, unbearable. I wasn't living. You know, I was just existing. You know, you say to yourself, you want this pain or you want your leg? You want this pain or you want your finger? You know, at that point, it's like, cut whatever you want to cut. Just stop this pain. You know, it's just too much. We have choices, and I chose to smoke. But if I would have had the information I think that we have today, my choice would have been much different. Just think of waking up one morning and all of a sudden your leg is gone. You know, and it's just something that you have to deal with. Life is so different now. You know, it really is.
Okay, so now we're going to look at veins, and the first we're going to look at is Berger's disease, or thromboangiitis obliterans. We're going to look at this one because we just saw that lady, of course, so I thought I'd quickly talk about this. It does affect both arteries and veins, actually, so we could have gone into either category. Berger's disease is a smoking-related disorder, or a tobacco-related disorder, I should say, because you can also get it from chewing tobacco or any tobacco-related product. And it comes about because it causes an inflammation and swelling in the extremities, and then that can lead to thrombi, little blood clots in the area, and that then leads to the tissue dying off, becoming very painful, and this can lead to infection, and it can lead to gangrene forming, and the only way to deal with it at that stage is by amputation, usually the extremities of the fingers and toes. However, if you don't stop smoking or chewing your tobacco, then eventually you'll end up losing limbs through amputation. So what are the signs of Buerger's disease? Well, the main signs are the claudication again, so similar to the peripheral arterial disease we had earlier, Buerger's disease. You can use your hands, you might be in the kitchen doing something, and then extreme pain in the fingers. And same with the feet, you're doing something, if you're using them a lot, then you get the pain in the toes and that. And if you stop, then that pain goes away. So that's a sign of the pain there, the claudication. You can get an inflammation of a vein, which you can visibly see. So one of the veins under the skin, you can visually see it swelling up, and that's where the thromboid clots have started clotting. You can also get a whiteness to the fingertips, so similar to the Raynaud's. So that's a visual sign. And I believe that's most of the symptoms. Okay, so what's the answer? How do you cure it? So once again, stop smoking, stop chewing tobacco, and that's the only way to stop this disease. And if you keep on, then it will keep on destroying your body until you do give up. Okay, so let's now move on to DVT. So DVT is deep vein thrombosis. So the veins take the deoxygenated blood, so your arteries take the oxygenated blood, they feed all the cells, and then the blood's taken away back up to the lungs so it can be reoxygenated, get the oxygen back in, so that can go about the body again. It's a whole cycle. So a block in the vein is stopping the return of the blood so to go and get this reoxygenated. And one of the signs of this is swelling. This is the main sign. You see the leg will suddenly start swelling. It can also be some localized pain in the area, some heat in the area, and the color change. Usually it goes like a dark red, and that's because the veins taking the blood back, it can't get past the clot, so it starts pooling in the lower leg, and you see this redness swelling to the leg. It's usually in one leg, predominantly it's usually in just one leg that you've got this clot, but you can sometimes get in both legs. In and of itself, it's not particularly dangerous because the blood does reroute around the vein that's blocked. However, it's the thrombi itself that's the danger, because that can break off, and that can then go into the lungs and cause a pulmonary embolism, and that can be fatal. So if you suspect you've got a DVT, go straight to the doctors. There are tests they can carry out. They can do blood tests and that. I think it's called a D-dimer test or something, where they look at, and that looks at the blood, and it can see the amount of the actual thrombus that's broken off and is in the blood. The clot that's broken off, little bits break off, and they can see how much is in the blood, and then they can see whether you've got DVT or not based on that. There are other tests, ultrasound tests and stuff like that. So it's worth going to the doctors just to make sure you don't get the more severe version of it. So the pulmonary embolism. So we're going to have a quick look at a picture here now. So this is pictures of DVT. You can see the swellings in the calf muscles there. You see that dark, the right one's a better one. You can see it's starting to get red here on this one, but this one's gone completely red. So you can see that one, this one here where my mouse is, and if you see that, so the picture on the right, the left leg on the right picture, that has a nice dark swelling where all that blood is pooled in the leg. So those are two pictures of DVTs. Okay, I won't spend too much time on this, so we're going to move on now to pregnancy. I had to quickly edit that bit because I said the wrong thing we're moving on to. So we're going to move on to pregnancy now, and I've done a very simple side because actually I've pre-recorded something from the March of Dimes website, and I'll explain what that is in the next video section. Okay, so this is the March of Dimes website. I thought I'd come here because they deal with premature birth, as you can see from their mission statement, fighting premature birth, the prematurity campaign. So this website is, well, the March of Dimes is a charity that is very large in America, and it was set up with that sole mission of fighting premature birth. It's got a lot of funding, and because of that they're able to fund a lot of research, and they do fund a lot of research, so that's why I chose them, because they have access to a lot of research. So these guys have good knowledge on this subject. So before we start, let's have a quick look at the research, just to show you what I mean. This is a list of all their research grants. I had a quick look through it. As you can see, there's 72 pages of it. Lots of universities: University of Alabama, Yale University, very good one, Stanford University. There's one from Cardiff University in Wales, New York. So mainly in America, but they do fund research in other countries as well. University of Toronto in Canada there. Okay, so let's go back. So this is the March of Dimes. This is have to see what they have to say. Why is smoking during pregnancy harmful? Well, actually, to start at the top, if you're pregnant, don't smoke, and stay away from second-hand and third-hand smoke. So second-hand smoke, that's what your friends or your boyfriend, whatever, breathes over you. Obviously not very good friends if you're pregnant and they're breathing smoke in your face. Try and stay clear of them, or at least ask them to smoke outside, or just walk away if they start lighting up. Third-hand smoke is the smoke that gets into your wallpaper, in your carpet, into your bedding, into your hair. Again, if you're in a house where someone smokes, probably best to ask them to smoke outside. If they've already smoked inside and you can smell it in the house, or you can see it on the walls or whatever, it's probably best to clean it down and make sure from that point forward you don't smoke in the house until, well, probably forever really. You don't want to be breathing it in ever, but that's up to you, of course. But during pregnancy, definitely you don't want to be breathing in second-hand or third-hand smoke, and certainly not first-hand smoke. So why is it harmful during pregnancy? Preterm labour, so it's born too early, haven't developed enough, and that can lead to all sorts of problems. Ectopic pregnancy, so that's where the fertilised eggs, it grows outside of the uterus, but it doesn't go to full term. It'll die. You just can't get a baby from ectopic pregnancy. It can cause, as it says here, serious dangerous problems for the pregnant woman. Then you've got bleeding from the vagina, problems with the placenta, like placental abruption and placental previa. So basically the placenta is what feeds the baby, is where you get your food from, and if you get different stages of abruption, so you get mild, moderate, severe, and in the severe one there's just not enough nutrients getting into the baby, and it will lead to like deformities and stunted growth, stuff like that. So it's just something to be avoided, and that can be avoided. Well, it's, some people will still get it even if they don't smoke, but you can reduce the risk. It's all about playing that risk game. Don't increase your risks of these bad things happening. How can smoking affect your baby? So again, premature babies, birth defects, so that cleft lip, cleft palate, health conditions present at birth, so babies more likely, if you're a smoker, to have asthma as they get older, and cause problem in overall health and how the body develops and how the body works. So that's quite serious actually, in how the body develops and how the body works. So you're not giving your baby a very good start in life if you're smoking. Low birth weight, and then you can have miscarriages, which is before 20 weeks, stillbirths after 20 weeks, sudden infant death syndrome. So if it's an unexplained death of a baby younger than 1 year old, you could say, well, if it's unexplained, how do you know it's because of smoking? Well, you just do surveys. They do surveys based on smokers and non-smokers. You can see when these SIDs happen, look at their social history, and then you find that more smokers have SIDs than non-smokers. Then there's a pretty good link there. It could be a causal link that smoking actually does increase the rate of SIDs. And if you come onto the NHS website, they also have it listed as well. Sudden infant death syndrome. So it is obviously, even though it's unexplained, there is obviously a link between smoking and sudden infant death syndrome. So even if you've had the child and it's okay, it can still suddenly die because of the smoking. There's a higher risk of that happening. Okay, so I think that's the March of Dimes. So yeah, there's a donate button up there if you want to donate to them, because it obviously looks like there's, like I did show you all that research. They're obviously doing a lot of research and funding a lot of research. So that seems like, sometimes people worry about whether their money gets spent on charities or not, but they obviously are doing it, because you can see the list of people they're funding. Okay, so that's the March of Dimes.
When I found out I was pregnant, I was 24 years old, recently engaged, and a year away from student teaching in college, and still smoking cigarettes. I knew that smoking was bad, well, at any time, definitely while you're pregnant, but I didn't think it would happen to me. I didn't think I would have a premature baby. I thought everything was going to be fine. It wasn't. I went into an ambulance. I was very scared. I felt alone. I felt like I hurt my baby. When my daughter was born 2 months early, she had to be placed on a feeding tube. I was not able to hold her. After she was about a week old, I was able to do skin-to-skin contact, but that was only for less than an hour a day. The only time I was allowed to touch her in her incubator was every 4 hours for a diaper change.
Okay, quitting strategies. Aids. So we're looking at patches, gum, sprays, and varenicline. Varenicline is a drug you take with the trade name Champix and Chantix. So of the aids, patches are the transdermal patches which have nicotine that leaches through the skin. Gum has nicotine in, and the nicotine in the sprays is a throat spray. Of these three methods, they are each equally effective, so pick one of your favourites. However, they do have a better effect if used in conjunction with each other, so it's better to go patches plus gum or patches plus sprays. You'd be looking at quitting after the patches, gum, sprays after 10 to 12 weeks. So you start off on high dosage, high amounts, and then you just reduce it over time until you can stop taking these nicotine replacements. So it's nicotine replacement therapy, NRTs. The varenicline, that has an effect on the brain. Basically, it has an agonist effect on the nicotine receptors within the brain. So that has an effect on the dopamine. So what that does is it reduces your cravings for the cigarette, and you'd normally start those tablets 2 weeks before you plan on quitting to just start building up that less loss of cravings. The only thing is with the varenicline that has to come from a GP prescription or from one of the NHS support service quit people. I'll talk about those people in a moment. So you'd start off with the aids, patches, gum. If that didn't work, then you could go to your GP and see if you can get the medication. However, although the varenicline is better than the patches, gum, sprays, at the moment it seems like vaping is one of the better things you can do to quit smoking. So I put controversy because there is some controversy about whether or not it's good for your health, vaping. And I don't think anyone claims it is good for your health, but what they do claim is that it's way, way better than smoking, which I would agree with. So I'll just go over some of the negatives quickly of vaping. The first one is those that use it with nicotine. You're still getting the nicotine effect, although I have seen some research saying that it's a lesser because a lot of the nicotine doesn't get into the systems in the same way that it does via cigarette smoking, and it's less of it in the actual brain than that. However, you will still get some there, and you still get some of that brain shrinkage going potentially. And also I have seen research this year actually from a chemical lab where it states about excessively high levels of aldehyde, which comes about from the atomization of the actual flavouring. So you have substances in the flavourings like propylene, propylene glycol and glycerol, stuff like that. So that atomization produces these aldehydes in high quantities, and they are a known animal carcinogen. They are a suspected human carcinogen. This is from what we know from the tobacco research with the aldehydes, and they are an irritant of the eyes and an irritant of the lungs. And one of the side effects of vaping is actually, a couple of side effects are sore throat and coughing, and also you can get some irritant in the eyes. So that does seem to be the case with the vaping. So those are the main downsides. However, according to the .gov.uk website, they researched this area, or they went out and looked at the research out there. PHE, which is Public Health England, they reported to the government, and they came to the conclusion that vaping was 95% safer than the cigarette. So they didn't say it was 100% good for you, but something that's 95% safer seems a hell of a lot better to do than something that, obviously has that shopping list of chemicals and all the side effects, etc. So vaping does seem a whole lot better than cigarette smoking. Unfortunately, 44% people in England still believe that vaping is as bad as or worse than smoking. So there's a perception problem there. It's obviously something you wouldn't want people to take up if they've never smoked, just to start vaping because it looks cool or something like that. So that's something to be aware of. I do notice they're starting to advertise vaping, like in the local Tesco's, got all these shiny bottles and big vaping tubes and things. So I'm guessing that could end up becoming quite attractive to people. So that's probably not so good. I think it should just stay in the purview of just being something to use for quitting smoking, rather than becoming a fad in and of itself. But again, it's still way better than people taking up smoking. And if it gets people to stop smoking, which is still one of the leading causes of death in this country, and diseases, of course, then sure, seems like a good thing to me. Okay, so that's .gov.uk. It's worth having a look at their site. Got some good information on it. And then NHS smoke free. So what we're going to do now is have a look at the NHS quitting stuff and some other websites at the same time, and we'll do that now. We'll shrink this down even. Okay, so there's two websites I recommend. This is the main NHS website, and in here you can find, if you type in smoking I put smoking cessation clinics to find the address of clinics, find smoking cessation clinics, and then you can put in your postcode. So we'll go CB4. And as you can see, that gives a list of all the doctors that run stop smoking clinics. So if you're in the UK and you want to stop smoking, you can come here, come to the NHS main website and find the stop smoking clinic. And those are at your local GPs if they run them. Another thing you can do is come to Smoke Free NHS, this website. So this is home expert support local stop smoking services. And this is different because it doesn't give you your GP. What it does do is give you a list of the CAM quit dedicated quit locations. I believe these are actually places you can walk into, get information. So they'll do group sessions, one-on-one sessions, stuff like that. And on the NHS website, it says you're 4 times more likely to quit smoking if you do it with support. So one-on-one support or group support. Do that in conjunction with vaping, and that's your very best way of giving up smoking. So you can come on one of these two sites here. So this NHS Choices one will lead you to your GP that does a stop smoking, or you can come to Smoke Free NHS, which will lead you to these dedicated quit smoking places. And there's more of the GPs doing their little clinics in my area. They're like about 5 pages of it, as opposed to just 4 or 5 for the smoke-free NHS. But I guess if you're in the major places like Cambridge, Bedford, the closest to me is 24 miles away. But if you're in the centre of Cambridge, obviously big areas, that services a lot of people. Okay, so that's those two. Now another thing you can do is use visual aids. So what I like to do whenever I do something is be proactive with it, create a folder, and then you can start using stuff like this. So this is the Australian campaign. So here you see smoking harms unborn babies. Smoking during pregnancy reduces the flow of blood into the placenta and limits the oxygen and nutrients that reach the growing baby. This increases the risk of miscarriage, stillbirth, premature birth, complications. So get all these images. This one's from the Australian government's quit here now. They listed all these pictures, so you can come and use them, put them in a folder, and then you can use them as inspiration for quitting smoking. So if you're pregnant, this is what could happen to your baby. And if you're smoking, look, it can lead to blindness, irreversible damage to the back of the eye. This is known as macular degeneration. Vision is lost, blindness may follow. Lung cancer, some nice visual images of what could happen to your lungs. We've seen some of that before. Heart disease, open heart surgery there, bypass. So again, that can lead to that. Okay, so that's worth doing. Also, what you can do, let's go back to my presentation. Let's go from current slide. Click, 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 click. And again. Right, on Amazon, you can get one of these posters here. So again, just put something on your wall, help to visualize why you want to quit smoking. So you can see all the effects there on the brain: stroke, addiction, wrinkles, tooth decay, stained fingers, throat cancer, lung disease, heart attack, liver cancer, stomach ulcers, kidney cancer, constricts blood vessels, intestinal ulcers, uterine cancer, infertility and impotence in men. There's probably one for men as well, poster. Bladder cancer, osteoporosis. So that's just a few of the things that can happen to you. So it's worth getting that just to help visualise and use that disgust using that disgust mechanic for why you want to give up. Okay, so thanks for watching. I will put the links to the NHS websites for quitting below, and some other links as well. Okay then, so to sum up, I'm going to take it from the beginning stages to the end stages to show how there's just nothing good that comes out of this. From the beginning, vast tracts of land are given over in multiple countries for the growing of a crop that does nothing but cause pain, misery, suffering and death. Those vast tracts of land often are in countries that have populations that are malnourished and would much more benefit from having a crop grow that could actually feed the population. Then you've got the picking of the crop itself. So each crop, the green tobacco leaf in the rain, especially in the rain, when you touch it, you can get something called GTS, green tobacco sickness. So it's a transdermal sickness where the nicotine can leach from the leaf into your skin and that. This particularly affects children, so there is child labour out in some of these tobacco fields. And the effects of the sickness are to cause headaches, dizziness, abdominal cramps, nausea, sickness, erratic pulse, erratic heartbeat, erratic blood pressure. So it has all these effects on the body and in children. Then from then you've got the curing process. During the curing process you've got dry curing, flue curing, light air curing. And during these processes, that in itself creates carcinogens. And that's done so it removes the chlorophyll from the cigarettes so that then the tobacco can be lit, because the chlorophyll makes it too wet so you can't actually dry it. So you get rid of the chlorophyll, dry it out so you can actually light the tobacco. And the very act of lighting is what creates a lot of carcinogens. It's the same as if you used to burn meat and eat it. Well, that burn is actually carcinogenic. So you don't want to be doing that if you burn your food. You want to scrape it off and not eat it. Then from then you've got the marketing side of things. So you had the social scientists and the psychologists in the past. They went around extolling the virtues of smoking and how it was relaxed you and was great for lifestyle, blah blah blah. Which was obviously, they had the information, and this was going on in the 80s and 90s as well. So they had the information, but they chose to be unethical and ignore it in favour of pushing something they knew not to be true, or very biased at best, shall we say, just for the sake of money, I suppose. And yeah, so that was pretty, I don't know, disgusting, I think, but there you go. Governments, on the other hand, they're same sort of thing. For many years, been giving subsidies to farmers to grow a tobacco crop, which again, they're giving money to populations, taking that money from taxpayers to give it to a group of people to grow a crop that's causing pain, misery and suffering for that nation and their families. Makes no sense to me. There is effort. Not all countries do that now, and in the EU there is something called decoupling. So they are giving funds to farmers so that they got the choice of, growing the tobacco plant or growing a food crop and getting the subsidy at the same rate. I don't know how many of them taken that up. We did see from that example in the presentation that Poland hasn't taken, well, it hadn't in that particular example taken it up, because you could see their subsidy rates. And not only that, governments are kind of fair, because they recognised how bad it was, which is why they brought about the cap on nicotine, because they didn't want people getting too addicted to it. But it doesn't seem like they kind of went far enough. They could have insisted that the land be given over to crops and, just been a bit more proactive in that, especially considering how much damage and negativity it does. And then also the very fact that they allow companies to, or maybe they're just lack of understanding really, because when the tobacco companies started doing the freebasing, what they did was they added a compound called ammonia. So ammonia was the actual one of the substances that actually deprotonated the nicotine molecules. So if you remember, the nicotine can then, once the ammonia stripped them of those protons, the nicotine can go through the mucous membranes much easier. And the way they got around this, they knew that it would make it more of a hit because it came from the cocaine industry, or it's believed to have come from the cocaine industry. There is some research out there to say that maybe it was actually the tobacco companies that started it. But it's neither here nor there. The point is, they did it. The point is, they added this substance and then they lied about it. They said, well, it gave the cigarettes a chocolatey taste. So the manufacturers of the cigarettes were lying again, pretty much. They knew full well that it was freebasing, and they knew why they was doing it, and they knew it was getting people even more and more addicted to this substance. It was a killer, deadly substance. And yeah, so again, nothing at any level so far has been any good. So that's at the marketing level, at the government level. Take it from the individual level, from the mother, from when she has her first child, from the fetus to the young baby, you know, to the young infant. At every stage, if you're smoking, it causes harm. So you could have a premature baby. Your baby could be stunted. It could be weakened. It could have asthma when it grows up. If it grows up at all, if it doesn't die, doesn't have an ectopic pregnancy. And then we saw that Amanda story, how it affected her father, her grandfather, her home baby, herself. It affects everyone around you. So, and there's a drop in productivity as a nation as a whole. If you think about, not all countries are like here in the UK. We have welfare, we have the NHS. Someone gets sick, there's someone to look after you, pretty much. Not in all cases, but pretty good here. But there's certain countries where you need a breadwinner, you need people working in the family, or you don't eat, you know. So if someone's smoking and then they get COPD or get a cancer, they're taken out of the system. If they need a carer, then that's a family member. That's two people taken out. So that's a massive impact on their livelihood, their productivity. And then there's the effect on the thalamus, the shrinking of the brain, so it lowers your IQ. Now, that's the difference between being able to come to afford to be able to formulate a thought, to formulate a hypothesis, to overcome obstacles, to, you know, to brainstorm an idea that turned out to be a great idea, to move your nation forward, to move your business forward, to move whatever. That's so yeah. I'd love, even if it's not 100% sure how many IQ points you lose, even if it's one, I'd be happily have one extra IQ point. I certainly need it. But the point is, worldwide, globally, it's affecting everyone. 7 million people die every year. Well, how many people in each family? You know, that's like probably affecting 50 million people each year. And then I was watching this program the other day, I caught this YouTube by this psychologist guy, and he just was talking about ripples, how, you know, you should be good to people because, you know, you affect one person can affect 10 people affect, you know, because it ripples out. You have smile to someone, they may smile to someone else, and they may be happy to someone else, and that's the difference between them being happy to someone and not happy towards someone having a good day and a bad day, and that spreads out. Well, just think about how many negative ripples smoking causes. How many people smoke in the world? You know, the trillions of cigarettes sold. Was it 5.8 trillion cigarettes sold every single year? The amount of people dying each year and suffering each year from the cancer, that's the death rates. Then there's the morbidity rates of how many people have cancers, how many people have COPD, how many people have reduced lives, reduced IQs, reduced productivity. So there's absolutely nothing good comes from this. It's almost as if a malignant entity said, how can I best stunt human growth? What can I do to put humanity back? I couldn't think of anything better than tobacco. Like, it was designed to hold humanity back. It holds back the IQ. Sorry, my voice is going to be talking too long. Holds back the IQ, holds back productivity, causes massive pain, suffering, death. Yeah, there's just nothing good comes from it. It causes people to lie and cheat just so they can get more money. Educated people, research scientists, social scientists, psychologists, all lying and deceiving to push an agenda for something they know not to be true that causes all this pain and suffering. What good comes from it? And governments around the world not doing anywhere near enough and being complicit for a long period of time because they were getting plenty of taxes, and governments love their taxes. So at every stage of the process, it's just nothing but bad, evil, bad, almost as if it was by design, by an evil, malignant design. But of course, it's just tobacco. Anyway, that's my thoughts on that. And I'm going to end this talk. I hope it was useful to you. I am aware that I wobble about in my chair a bit much and not quite as articulate as I should be. So I'm going to work on that for my next video. Probably take 3 or 4 months off before I do my next one to make sure I can speak a bit clearer, not stumble over my words, and not be so self-conscious when talking in front of this webcam. Because although I have done streaming, that seems more natural to me because I'm chatting away and talking to people and I'm just relaxing. But actually making a video, a serious video, I've become very self-conscious. So I don't know why, but I've got to work on that. So for the next one, hopefully it'll be more succinct. Anyway, thanks for watching.